Hi everyone, this is Victor, your host at StudyLab, and today we're back with another video tutorial on Bash scripting basics. So last time we coded a small guess a number game in Bash. If you haven't seen that, please take a look because we'll be improving on that script today. And last time, because we hadn't had a chance to discuss loops yet, we were just basically executing our script over and over again so that it continues to ask the user for a number as long as that number is different from the randomly generated one. And that's fine, I guess, for this case, but sometimes you'll just want to loop through a specific number of lines, so through a subset of your code. You don't necessarily want to execute the whole script over and over again from start to end. You might want to repeat 2 or 3 lines until some condition occurs or while some condition is fulfilled or for a specific number of iterations. So the way to do that is by using loops. And let's see how to rewrite our previous script using while loops and until loops. One thing before we do that, remember that last time I told you that you need to seed your random number generator by just using whatever number you want here and assign it to the random variable. Unfortunately, that doesn't work quite well because let's echo here our number, and if we save this now, and if we save this now and execute again, it's always going to be the same number which is generated. So this, you can either remove this line altogether and save, and now if we execute, it's 46, then it's 0, then 3. So this changes. Or if you want to seed the random number generator, you need to use a different seed each time. And one way to do that would be to use a Unix timestamp. So date plus s allows you to do that. So this whole expression will return the current Unix timestamp. And since that changes every second, you should be fine. So 93, 47, 50, and so on. So now that we have that out of our way, and I apologize for the mistake, but I'm basically learning Bash together with you, so I'm not an expert. So now we have our random number between 1 and 100 here, and we need to repeat few lines of code, right? Which are, first we read the number from the user. Please enter a number between 1 and 100, and we read this into a variable named user guess. And once we have this variable, we can check if user guess is less than guess me, which is our randomly generated number, then echo try a bigger one. And elif user guess is greater than guess me, then echo try a smaller one. And we basically need to do all of this over and over again until user guess is equal to guess me, and done. So let's just indent it correctly. So basically the syntax of the until loop is until, then your test command, and then you need to have do here, and it ends with done. And between do and done you have your commands which you want to be repeated, and they will be repeated over and over again until this thing returns a successful exit code, basically. In some cases, if you need to use multiple tests, you can add them on separate lines like this. So you can test for something else as well, and for something else, and so on, and then do and your commands. But now we just have one simple condition. Now there are a few issues if you try to just execute this the way it is. The first thing is that when we test this out at first, the user won't have entered any values yet. So our user guess variable will first be empty. And so bash will basically translate all of that test into this. This will be empty, and then EQ, and whatever our randomly generated number is, let's say 73 or 33, and it will give out an error saying that it was expecting a unary operator. Why? Because it only has one operand here, and EQ is a binary operator. It needs something on the left side as well. It needs two things to compare. Okay? And the way to fix this is basically to just switch to string comparisons instead, and quote this and switch to an equal command for string comparisons, and quote this here. So that will fix it, because now this will turn out like this: an empty string equals and whatever the number is, which is perfectly fine for strings. So that's one issue. What else? Well, okay, so since this all of this repeats itself until this happens, then if we end our loop, then for sure this condition is fulfilled. So for sure, after this, all of this is done, we know that the user correctly guessed the number. So we can simply type, "Congratulations, you've guessed it." So we don't need to code that if inside the loop necessarily. We could, but I like it better this way. So it's my call. I'm the boss, so deal with it. Okay, so I think this should work. Let's try it out. Okay, and guess me. Syntax error, of course. What did we do now? We forgot to close our if. So the if must always end in phi. Save this and execute, and now it works. So let's try 40. Bigger 60, smaller 50, bigger 55, bigger 57, and another error. This happens all the time when you're coding, so especially if you're tired. I forgot to close the quotes on this echo. Sorry about that. Finally, if we run it now, it should all work. Smaller, 30, 20, 10, 5, 1, 3, 4. Congratulations, you've guessed it. And just to make sure it generates, it really generates random numbers each time, let's run it again. 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 86. Congratulations. So this time we had a different number. So that works using the until loop. Another way you can write this is using a while statement, which is basically the reverse of the until statement. So while, which is as long as basically this condition occurs, so we must reverse this. As long as these two are different, as long as these are not equal, we execute all of this here. So it has the exact same syntax, just that the condition must be reversed from the until statement. As long as the two numbers aren't equal, we execute this. So after the while is done looping, then it means that these two are indeed equal. Save, execute, and it's working. Congratulations. Okay. Now there is another form of loop, but it's not really appropriate for what we are doing here, because it's used for different things basically. So we'll open up a different script here, v4 script, and shebang bin bash. Okay, so this let's just start with the for loop that's closest to C syntax. So for, and here we're using double parenthesis instead of a single parenthesis as you'd have in C, and also make sure you space this out correctly if you don't want errors. So for and now we initialize a variable, so I equals 0 semicolon, and our condition is I is less than 10, let's say. Okay, well, within the double parenthesis it shouldn't matter how you space it, but just so it's readable. And now we use the post increment to increment this variable I++, do, and done. And we'll just echo our I variable here to see what's happening. Save this, chmod +x to make it executable, and for script. And as you can see, it loops through numbers from 0 to 9. Why through 9? Because this happens as long as our number is less than 10. So once it gets to 10, it doesn't echo. If you want 10 to echo, you need to use less than or equal here. So this is okay for numbers. You can also use multiple variables, like j equals, let's start with 5, and add multiple conditions here. You separate them by comma. J is less than 15, I++, and actually let's do something different. So we initialize j with 9, and j needs to be greater than 0, and we decrement j with each step, and we echo I and a dash and j. Save this. Let's clear the screen and execute. So this is I on the left side and this is j on the right side. We're incrementing I, but we're decrementing j with each step. You see that it stops with 8 here. Yeah, we need to change this condition here so it's greater than or equal to 0, and clear and execute. And now it's working the way I intended it to work. So you can use multiple variables in a C style for like this. But the more common way that for is used in bash is in this form. So for variable in a list, then you do your commands and done. And there are different forms a list can take. For instance, let's try a simple thing. List equals, and if you separate values by space, let's use strings instead of numbers now. So Alice, John, George, Francisca, and Victor. So we have this list, and now we're assigning it to a variable name. So for each name in this list, let's echo the name. And just a couple issues. We have spaces here, so let's quote all of this, and this is a variable, so it needs to be preceded by a dollar symbol. Save and execute, and now it loops through that list of names and it echoes out each name. So this is one type of list. Another cool thing is that you can use a command here, and you do that by using the dollar parenthesis syntax. This basically executes what's in between the parentheses in a separate shell and returns the output. So, and an alternative way to do this was to use the double backticks, but I think this is more this is nicer, it's easier to read, but you can do this if it looks more simple to you. So for instance, we want to cycle through the files in the current directory, echo file. So we execute the ls command, and all of this is a return into a list, and the for will cycle through that list. Clear and execute. So this is, if I ls now, you can see that this is the list of files I have in this directory. So you can use it like that with commands, and you can even use globs, so file matching patterns basically. So instead of ls, I can just do a star here, and it should output all the files in this current directory. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. Or obviously you can add a specific directory here, home, and then a wildcard, for instance. Okay, for some reason that didn't work properly. Let's try bin. Okay, so that works. Not sure why it doesn't read the home directory properly, but anyway. So that's another way of doing it. One other way is to use files. So you can cat a file here, for instance, my file. Save, and now let's create a file called my file and enter value 1, value 2, value 3, and so on. Save this and execute our script. Execute our script for script. Get my file command not found. Well, that's interesting. Let's edit our script. Well, I'm not sure if it's the Mac or... Okay, so the double backticks work, but not the other syntax for some strange reason. If I do this, okay, so my fault. You don't need to quote your command when you use the dollar parenthesis syntax. I apologize. So either this or the double backticks work fine, and it prints out the list of values in that file. But what happens if we have all of these separated by new line characters, which is what you usually have? Still works. What else can I tell you about the for loop? If you alter the IFS variable, let's first save it into original IFS, and then IFS equals comma, so we change it to a comma. Then the for should separate out the values in the list based on the comma separator instead of blanks. And let's not forget to restore our original IFS once we're done with it. Save, and now edit our file and try separating these by comma. Save and execute our script, and now it runs properly. If we use space here just for the first, to separate out the first two values, and execute again, you can see that it takes these as just one value because it uses the comma as a separator and not the blank space. And last but not least, even if you use a space or comma or whatever other character, if you want to group, if you want to make this one value, so this string, then you simply enclose it in quotes. Save and clear and execute. And that didn't go right. Okay, let's see. I think this only works with spaces. Save and edit our script, and let's just comment out these IFS lines here and see what happens. Okay. And what if we add our values directly in here? So value 1, value 2, and then value 3. Okay, so for some reason Let's get my file. Yeah. So I guess this only works if you have your values, if you input your values directly or you have them stored into a variable. So let's use comma again, and now let's have a file variable here, my file equals, and let's get my file, and let's use this get my file, and we can use for file in my file variable. So we read the file contents into a variable and then we pass that variable onto the for loop. Save, clear, and execute. So now it works. It's weird. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't work if you pass this on to it directly. And now it does work. Or does it? We forgot to enter our comma separators again. So now, yeah, this doesn't work. And if we use our variable instead of using the cat command directly, still doesn't work. But using this, let's remove this here. So this works. If any one of you out there has any idea why this happens, let me know. Okay, so that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this and found this useful. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you can stay in touch and be notified whenever new videos come up. Until next time, have fun and keep studying.